Last year, I think it was, I began to get messages from a number of the families saying that they appreciate what I do, and that was encouraging and heartening to receive. And then their messages usually would end with or include some reference to celebrating New Black Media Appreciation Month. I was surprised because this was the first I'd heard of it, but it was certainly a welcome surprise. Dr. Joseph Ben-Jochannan famously said that instead of black people asking white people for a holiday, we should take a day. Dr. Ben's statement was my primary reason for beginning to commemorate our Grandmaster teachers some years back. A large part of that was because so many of their birthdays coincidentally were when the so-called holiday season occurs, but also because I wanted you to have a constructive and edifying reason to anticipate the end of the calendar year and the start of the new one. A time of year to remember our Grandmaster teachers and our warrior scholars, our intellectual forebears, and the incredible body of work they left to us. They did the work when it was hard to do, when it literally had to be done by hand, walking or at best driving to talk to the people. There was no internet back then. There wasn't even digital video to help spread the word. They had personal meetings, books, and television, and that was it. But for black people of principle, that was enough. We are indebted to the Dr. Clarks, the Dr. Benns, Dr. Cress Welsings, Dr. Williams, the Dr. Mackeys, and a number of others for the work they put in. We are the inheritors of that legacy, but it falls to us to show ourselves worthy of it by living it out and celebrating their lives. You can tell a lot about a group of people. In fact, you can tell everything about a people by who and what they choose to celebrate. The key word there being choose. It's also why I make it a point to remind you of Malcolm X Day, May 19th. And if we revere these true icons like we say we do, then we must celebrate them. And we have to make it a point to do so on our own. I've long told you that institutions are the guardians of ideas and ideals. Most people think that a big building is what makes an institution, but it's not. It's just a big building. An institution can be a building, but only if there's a group of people inside of it who are organized around a particular set of ideas and ideals. That's important because ultimately an institution is the marriage of resources with a long-term ideological mission. Resources without a mission is just wasted money. An idea or ideal without resources is just wishful thinking. You can't even have culture without resources, much less institutions. The most rudimentary form of self-determination is to declare for oneself what is in your own interests, and it's also the most important. But to get back to our holy days, what makes a day hallowed is not whether a government says that it is, or if a corporation, fashion designers, or whoever makes a marketing campaign around it like Valentine's Day or what have you. What makes a day hallowed is the people. When they take a day and turn it into part of their institutional memory. A people who do that are demonstrating that they have matured to the point where they will literally mark out a particular time and place and say, this is ours. When it comes to asserting the basic rights and combating the extraordinary lies told about the black community, that's why you have the New Black Media. So whoever decided that this month would be a time when we commemorate and even celebrate New Black Media, I gotta tip my hat to you. I don't know who it was, but I'm glad you did it. You didn't wait for anyone to give you permission. You just went and did it. And that's the kind of initiative and self-starting mentality we need. So, why even commemorate the New Black Media at all? To ask that question might seem redundant, if not outright unnecessary, but if we're going to be talking about the New Black Media and how much we appreciate it, we need to go ahead and be able to verbalize why that is. The first reason is because we needed a voice, one that would speak for the black grassroots, because nobody else was. And when I say grassroots, that includes not just those of us who came out of slavery in the United States. We are the core, the foundation, because we represent the largest and longest standing liberation struggle in the world today. We are where it reaches its sharpest expression. But we would not be honest if we were to say that we are the end-all and be-all. We have family all over the world who understand the evil that we're up against, and they want it defeated as much as we do. And they happen to be just as involved as we are, perhaps from a distance, but they're still in the fight. Family in Jamaica, South America, in Africa, in Britain, family in the Far East from Tiananmen Square to Tokyo. Sure, there's tethers all over the place, But there's also a lot of black folks out there who have their heads on straight. They see the problems, and they want to be part of the solution. I see comments and mentions every day from family whose roots may not go back to the killing fields of the American South, but they are as dedicated to the fight for black empowerment as any of us are. And I don't use the term family lightly. Family means familiars. We all know the expression, not all skin folk are kinfolk. Well, that goes the same with our international counterparts. We all know we got a lot of black folks among us who should have been left on the plantations. And while the tether plague is real, we should also remember there's a lot of black people abroad who see it and hate it as much as we do. They feel isolated, however. They feel alone, as if they're the only ones, just like a lot of us had until the New Black Media came along. Part of the message of the New Black Media is that you are not alone. You never have been. A lot of us see this depravity and we're determined to bring it to an end. That's the reason why we do this. We do it day in and day out. We do it consistently. This is our PowerPoint. This is where we focus the people. Your daily, if not hourly reminder, you're not alone. Another reason that the New Voices of Black Media exist is because over 15 years ago I stated what our mission was and continues to be. To take control of the social discourse within the black community and to elevate the debate. But there was also something else that I told people over 15 years ago too. I don't do politically oriented entertainment. Those of you who have followed me since day one, you know that's one of the very first sayings that I came to repeat over the years. This is not about finding whatever will entertain you or whatever will amuse you. And that's the reason why a number of New Black Media people get a little irked whenever family either calls in or they leave a comment to a video calling it a show. Now, to be fair, I do of course understand that that's what all of these would-be influencers and professional attention seekers that a lot of you watch refer to their content as. Almost all of them are hoping to get some sort of endorsement from a white corporation or to get on a TV show like Issa Rae did, and a number of others want to follow suit. They're trying to get noticed by someone in the white media. A lot of them are failed actors, failed sitcom writers, failed extras, and they post videos as their would-be calling cards in the hopes that some white media executive or perhaps talent agent will notice them and they can get the ball rolling on their would-be career in entertainment. These people try to monetize their audience so that they can use them as a springboard to a life of comfort and wealth for themselves, while they gladly promote every anti-black stereotype and trope in the book, all for the amusement of the white media executives who they sold their souls to. Well, that is not the New Black Media, and you definitely know it ain't me. I've been out here a very long time, longer than practically anybody else in this particular space. And if I was going to break bad on you, I would have done it a long time ago. I think 15 plus years is a long time for somebody to wait to turn the tables on you. If I was going to try some half-brain stunt to exploit the people who give me their time and attention into leverage so that I can get an HBO deal or some sort of first look whatever with a white studio, I would have done that a long time ago. When I tell you I have real and abiding contempt for the institutions and trappings of white power, I mean it. And sure, there's been a handful of these little Negroes that you see on places like YouTube and Facebook and others, and they've successfully parlayed the audience that they've accumulated and gathered into a springboard to get themselves a white media deal. That may be good enough for them, but it ain't good enough for me. Being black first won't make you rich, but you will be able to sleep at night and respect yourself when you look in the mirror. Most of these clout-chasing people that some of you watch can't say that. When Issa Rae was on YouTube, she could not wait to sell out to some white media company. Awkward Black Girl was a clumsy takeoff of Tyler Perry's Diary of a Mad Black Woman. Issa Rae doesn't have an original thought in her empty head, but then again, these bootlicks already know these white media companies don't want originality. They want conformity. So when you see some sniveling, groveling, pathetic butt kisser like Charlemagne the whatever, towing the line for this or that, making excuses for the latest racist outrage, when you see the white media showering Tyler Perry with praise and money for running around in a dress, acting like a loud stereotypical mammy, then these bootlicks like Issa Rae, they know that's the white media signaling that if you want the white media to put you on the payroll and give you a deal, then this is what you gotta do. And of course, being bootlicks, they obey. Also, as the New Voices of Black Media, we make it a point that we do not look for support from black celebrities. Now, that's not to say that there haven't been at least a few black celebrities who know where it's at and what it's got to be. We have had very, very few people, however, like a Tashina Arnold, who has been one of the very few people who's had the courage to mention us, or a Judge Joe Brown. There's another one. The black celebrities who are actually willing to even mention us, you can count them all on one hand and still have enough fingers left to drive. That's what I mean by it's not going to be the masses who change things. It's going to be a select precious few at any level. And by the way, I give a lot of respect to Tashina Arnold and Judge Joe Brown, especially considering where they work. It's hard to stand for what's right, especially when you have to stand alone. And if you're a black person who works in Hollywood and you're not ready to buck dance at a moment's notice, then you will be in rare company indeed. And the picture is just sordid when you look at the white media's so-called news. These old, corrupt, and crumbling bootlicks you see on the white media cable stations pretending to criticize the very system that they support, pretending to be rebels when in reality they're just sock puppets, mindlessly repeating what their white media paymasters tell them to say. They can't attack white power. They can only criticize certain select individuals, and even then, they can only go so far. They spend as much time making excuses for the white supremacists as they do pretending to criticize them. We could all see through the scam, and we demanded better. That's why the new voices of black media exist. Some of you have taken issue with my tone, particularly when I respond to people's comments. Well, let me tell you why I go in the way that I do. I take what I do dead seriously. I have all my life, because that's the situation my people are in. Part of taking control of the social discourse within the black community is to institute a new vocabulary. We want to distinguish ourselves from the other stuff out there. That's why in my case I call my content video essays and not just videos. I don't do sermons. I give very few speeches, though, and now with the moment of truth, I'm stepping into a different arena, simply by virtue of the fact that I'm now posting 6 days a week. But I don't call the moment of truth a video essay. I call it your daily briefing. And that's not to be pretentious either. The President of the United States gets a daily briefing. Intelligence chiefs for these spy organizations get them. International corporate heads have assistants and advisors who prepare for them a briefing on the important things they need to know. As black people, I want us to have the same, so it was crucial to me that you get a daily briefing from me, and equally important that it's available to you first thing in the morning. Whether you're at home getting ready for work, or on the drive to the job, or if you're listening at the gym, or at the office, or wherever you happen to be. I thought it was very important to make sure my people started their day right, with a strong dose of truth. It was extremely important to me that I post first thing in the morning because I want to get to you before the white media does, before MSNBC or NPR or even your local news or so-called news radio station has had a chance to try to indoctrinate you. Posting frequency is important because it gets you into the habit of being at the appointed place at the appointed time, and that's important if you're trying to change a culture. Frequency is also a key part of brainwashing. That's why I do what I do, brainwashing and mind control. I want to help you to cleanse your mind of that garbage the dominant society tries to force on you, and I also try to help you control your mind. That's what we mean by brainwashing and mind control. It does you very little good to have a clean body, but your mind is covered in white media muck. And only a fool doesn't believe in controlling their own mind. Frequency also counts because we need to condition ourselves to be reliable. Reliability is the core of all successful group efforts. And if you think that you're going to have any sort of group economics without having reliability, what you're really saying is there's going to be this loose, very sloppy group of hustlers who are not going to get very much done. We don't have the resources that the enemy does. From the white media to these white right-wing think tanks to these white supremacist extremist groups, the enemy is very well funded. Part of why there's so many white supremacist and bootlicking turncoat sellouts eager to join them is because they've been able to demonstrate that there's material benefits, at least for some of them, for practicing anti-black hate speech. They understood the need to incentivize people to attack us, even to get other black people to do it. Carrots are far more effective than sticks in this regard. Though to be fair, in recent years, there has been noticeably less job openings for Negro mouthpieces on the white left and the white right. But some Negroes still try for it because they think there might be some crumbs left. I told you about how Guy Cecil, who Rachel Maddow described as one of the most important people in the Democratic Party, said the party needed to change its messaging. Well, somewhere you can bet Roland Martin was licking the butter biscuit crumbs from his mouth and saying, but finally I can get me a contract, a consultant job with the DNC. That's what bootlicks like Roland hear whenever some white leader in the DNC talks about messaging. He thinks he can finesse himself a consulting job with them. You cannot reform the DNC any more than you can reform the police. Both must be broken so that it's impossible for them to function like they did before. The bad guys have huge resources and an enormous head start. The black media has you. And as you've shown in recent years, when you're focused, that's more than sufficient. And that brings me to the most important part about the new Voices of Black Media. You. The new black media is not simply the people who are behind the microphones. That's just one part of it. The other part, the greater part, the most important part, is you. We're not changing the social discourse in the black community or anything else unless you are behind that effort. So when you hear myself or any of the other new Voices of Black Media saying we, that's exactly what we mean. We're talking about us and you, especially you. Crucial element of the new black media's message happens to deal with economics because that is the power of white supremacy, but it's also the power that's going to break them. That's why we preach the nonstop sermon of disciplining your dollars, an economy with an ideology. Up until this point, black people have been conditioned to think that the only things that they should put their money behind is a preacher, their wardrobe, or some product a white corporation's trying to sell them. H. Rap Brown said the problem isn't that our enemies have us outnumbered, it's that they've got us out-organized, and he was right. So it's important that you engage with the new Voices of Black Media as frequently as you can. Now, I don't know who your particular favorite new Voice of Black Media is. I'm certainly not arrogant enough to just assume, well, it must be me. But whomever it is, make sure that you listen to them. Make sure that you engage with them. This is a group effort. It doesn't work if the only person who's doing anything is the one behind the mic. Anti-black racism is all of our enemy, and all of us must be involved in the fight against it. And whomever your particular favorite voice of the new black media is, I'm sure I speak for all of us when I say, never underestimate the value of your involvement at any level. When you help disseminate these talking points that you hear in places like this, that's important because it pushes back against the avalanche of racist rhetoric that gets posted in comment sections and pumped out in videos and podcasts all the time. Your contributions are important because they constitute material encouragement, like a pat on the back from the family. For 15 plus years, I've done this. It makes sense to me to spend so much of my life devoted to this cause because my people are worth it. To spend so much time speaking into a microphone, looking at a computer screen, but not once in all of the decade and a half that I've done this have I ever felt alone. Not even once. And that's because of you. Not once have I ever felt the urge to feel sorry for myself or to feel put upon. And don't get me wrong, I'm just like the rest of you. I go through my trials and tribulations. I go through the problems, whether it be health related or whether it be interpersonal or what have you. But not once have I ever sat there and thought to myself, I'm just out here all alone. There hasn't been a single day in 15 years that you haven't reminded me that you're right here beside me. YouTube has wasted 15 years, however, trying to suppress this message, and they failed because of you. The success and effectiveness of the new black media is completely due to your perseverance, your persistence, your uncompromising stand for black empowerment. And I know I speak for all the people who you know as the new Voices of Black Media when I say that we don't take you for granted. Most people who come online fail to ever gain any kind of following. You know the type, people who think that this is some sort of vanity project or another. People who get to the point they think they're doing something big if they can get 1,000 people to watch them. They struggle to get anyone to even acknowledge that they exist. The vast majority of people who do any sort of online content, especially videos, they're lucky if they can get even a few dozen people to watch them regularly, if that. That's the reason why so many of them resort to some clickbaity nonsense as they hope that that's going to jumpstart some sort of career as an influencer. But then what are you going to influence? They get one video that has 20,000 views, maybe more, and then it's back to the single digits. I've watched over the last decade and a half as so many of these would-be up-and-comers turned out to be nothing more than mere flashes in the pan. They glom onto some fad or another and then flame out because they didn't have much to say. If someone sticks around for a while, that's not just due to their own hard work or compelling content. It's because there's an audience who has decided that they have earned the right to exist. You can't will yourself to relevancy. Only the people who choose to watch you can decide that. But make no mistake, I understand that whatever I did to earn your trust, support, and encouragement up until this point, that was only good up until yesterday. I know I have to keep earning your trust, keep earning your support, keep earning your confidence. I have to justify you continuing to listen to me. It's a duty I don't take lightly. The kind of content that I create does not get millions of views because there is no enormous audience for Black empowerment. Black survival isn't very popular. That's just the truth. Not even among Black people, sad to say. At least, not yet. But as we've seen in recent years, Dr. John Henrik Clarke was so right when he said that when we learn to start winning again, all kinds of Negroes who were running away from blackness will suddenly decide that they're Black again. A lot of you have said over the years that my channel or Twitter feed or what have you ought to be bigger than it is. And I've always responded, not really. Part of that is because YouTube has done everything that it can to stop the message of Black empowerment. I've shown you just what they've been doing the last year alone. After this channel passed 100,000 subscribers, they've been age restricting my videos, taking down videos with phony claims of cyberbullying Will Smith. They actually said that I cyberbullied Will Smith, by the way. Or claiming that my videos violated hate speech, only to be forced to have to remove that later on. Why would they do all that if our message wasn't making all the right people uncomfortable? What are they afraid of? Not me. They're afraid of you. They feared the day when a critical mass of Black people with their heads on straight would rally around a message like this. You are the ones who will actually get things done. Because you want to know where the masses of Black people are right now? Well, last night they were at the club. Today they're probably at the church, or they're planning to go to a club or a church meeting. They're trying to get down or get turned up or flued out, but what they're not doing is focusing on their empowerment. It's not the masses who change things, because it never is. It's always a small, determined core group of conscientious people. You are part of that chosen few. And as someone who you have given your time and attention to, I say thank you for allowing me to be one of the few people you've chosen to listen to. I know I speak strongly and I'm very blunt with my words, but if you believe nothing else I've ever said to you, please believe this when I say I am humbled by you having stuck by me for so long. When someone decides to go into public oratory in any arena, they don't actually know if anyone's going to care to hear what they have to say. And if people do listen, nobody knows for how long. When we set out to begin this effort to take control of the social discourse in the Black community and to elevate the debate, that meant no joking, no celebrity gossip, no fixating on who's beefing with whom. The white media spent a very long time and put a heck of a lot of money into conditioning Black people to think that that's what's worthy of our attention, that is what's supposed to qualify as Black discourse, and it doesn't. Black people deserve a high caliber of conversation, the highest level of dialogue in our community. I started doing this because I was sick and tired of being sick and tired of the sewage the white media was pumping out here, from radio to TV to print. I saw what so-called Black commentators were saying, and I wanted to vomit. I couldn't stand it. I wanted material that was intelligent, that spoke to me, material that was informative, that focused on information and not infotainment. And since I didn't see anyone doing the kind of material that I wanted to see, I decided to do it myself. But it turns out, of course, once you start doing these things, you find that you come in contact with other people, or you hear about other people and you find out, hey, I'm not alone. See, in the beginning, it seemed lonely at first. The Black media landscape 15 plus years ago was dominated by pathetic pretend preachers and ghetto scholars who were trying to imitate the Grandmaster teachers. But all they ever did was talk about Kundalini energy, chakras, status correction, and spiritual mumbo-jumbo. Black discourse at that time was a vast wasteland, people making a mockery of the rich legacy left to us by our master teachers. We had an infestation of bottom feeders who tried to co-opt the trappings of our master teachers and pervert it into just another place for hucksters, pimps, fakers, frauds, phonies, and fools to see if they could hustle themselves some sex or a few dollars or both. And for a while it seemed they were in complete control. The white media was certainly backing them up, giving them a platform to put their trash out on radio or anywhere else. But then came the B1 movement, with its vanguard being the new voices of black media. We told you from the very beginning many years ago that this wasn't going to be quick or easy, but that the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And as Dr. John Henrik Clarke said, if it takes you 10 years to start a revolution, then get started today. And after a year, you only got 9 more to go. And that's what we did. Those of you who have been around here for a while or just been around recently, you know what was happening in the beginning. When the bad guys thought that they were in control. When the fakers, frauds, phonies, and fools were thinking to themselves that nobody was going to challenge them because there were just so many of them out here and so few of us. We were ridiculed, mocked. Who y'all think y'all is? Talk about white supremacy and racism. Huh? Y'all think y'all Malcolm or something? Y'all are just some fools. These were the frauds who tried to usurp the place of our master teachers. But it was also a lot of black people who also surrendered their minds to the flood of garbage that we have been inundated with. If the legacy of Dr. John Henrik Clarke and others is truly ours, then we must be bold in asserting that it is ours, that we are the rightful inheritors of it. And so we did. But I want to make a small correction. What the new voices of black media began to do 15 plus years ago was not a revolution. It was a restoration. We were restoring the black discourse to what it had previously been. We were reinstituting a level of conversation and insight that the Kundalini status correction New Age spirituality crowd simply couldn't keep up with. And slowly but surely, our numbers grew. But it wasn't enough to simply have more people. We needed the right kind of black people. The sad truth is most people are useless when it comes to changing society because they'll never do anything other than watch TV. They will never say a word in defense of their own lives, much less do anything. So we crafted a message delivered in a way meant to run them off. The people who want to sit on a couch 8 hours a day smoking a joint, or the people who have decided that going to the club is their priority, or the people who think that entertainment is more important than information. We want to make sure they're not comfortable here. We routinely use words and phrases meant to offend them. We basically rhetorically slap them in the face, and that's deliberate. We don't want them here. As our great warrior scholar Khalid Muhammad said, Negroes like that ain't gonna take us nowhere. And he was right. So we regularly remind them that they're not respected here and not wanted here. This message is for the people who deserve to hear it. And when it became clear this was the direction the people were going in, we set a standard that the old dead black media or any of these fakers, frauds, phonies, and fools simply couldn't match. And that's the reason why you see them dying out. And as for these greasy, slimy Negroes on the white media's radio stations, these morning radio morons, they all had to change what they said to sound more like us. We didn't have to change one word of our message. The Charlemagne, the frauds, the roly-poly Martins and others, Joke Reed thought that she would invalidate us by calling us Russian bots. You see how long that lasted. Didn't even make it a month. The people who mocked us 15 years ago or recently are mostly gone. Some of them saw which way the wind was blowing and they tried to reinvent themselves as imitations of us, but it didn't work because they're not smart enough to do the kind of work that we do. When you've spent 10 to 15 years talking about and repeating and spreading gibberish about chakras and status correction, you are not qualified to talk about real things. But what I'm most proud of is that we crafted a message meant to insulate itself from the white media's attempts to co-opt it. We are so aggressive with the message. We use every word as a dagger straight into the heart of white supremacy. We make sure that every argument is made and molded in such a way hostile to white power. They can't even use our words without hurting themselves. So recruiting some bootlicks to try to talk like us would never work since our message is so dangerous to white power, they can't even repeat it indirectly. But equally important is that you, the force multipliers, you guys have listened and you make sure to watch out for people who try to water the message down. That was the strategy. A message that's too smart and too sharp for these gutter rats within the community to try to pretend to be like us, and too overtly hostile to white power for the white media to try to co-opt it. And they've tried. First they had bootlicks attack us openly like Joke Reed and Roly Poly did. Even Kamala Harris tried to jump on that bandwagon. They also tried and failed to manufacture their own phony baloney black grassroots voices. They tried to fabricate their own phony counterfeit versions of the New Black Media, even trying to use our verbiage. New Black Media with the serial numbers filed off. I've detailed for you some of these failed efforts from the root, all the way to white Ivy League universities, all of them trying to bestow legitimacy on their own hand-picked puppets. D. Ray McKesson was one of many failures. But these L's for the white media would never have happened if you hadn't been fully on board with this kind of message. Your discipline is what makes the difference. And for that, I cannot thank you enough. You may think that because you have no power in your hands today that you will always be powerless, and I'm here to tell you that's not true. Why do you think the white media and the government spend billions of dollars every year attacking us? Billions of dollars for programs and personnel whose sole purpose is to impoverish and control you and me. You don't do that to people who are powerless. You do that to people who have so much power that if they ever unleashed it, it would be unstoppable. If they can't control you, then white supremacy is finished. Yours are the eyes and the ears and the minds that they're fighting to control. You are the evidence that the message of black empowerment resonates. Why it has black people who are eager and interested in hearing it. The reason I speak the way I do is because I'm like a lawyer in the courtroom, like a prosecuting attorney who indicts white supremacy every single day for the greatest crime in human history. I'm up against white media racists and their bootlicking accomplices who are trying to take the victim and claim they deserve to be attacked, deserve to be robbed, or who try to claim that no laws were broken because they're white and they say so. It's much like being a prosecutor dealing with a corrupt judge, a crooked judge trying to do whatever they can to swing things in favor of a defendant who they know to be guilty. Well, who speaks for the victims of the crime? Who will make sure to shut down the lies and to put the judge on notice that he's not above the law? And never underestimate the value of your involvement. At any level, this is a group effort. You have to be involved and stay involved, but never forget, a people who do not protect their advocates will have no advocates. And you need advocates. You need someone speaking up for you. The enemy has PR firms and marketing corporations and studios and private wealthy individuals pushing out the propaganda against us day and night. You require people who will push back. The information and analyses that you get from the New Black Media must be of the highest level. And why is that important? Because you're facing the highest level threat. The bad guys have most of the advantages. The only trump card you have is information. If wielded correctly and aggressively, it will be effective. But that presupposes you're getting the correct information and taking it in. The new voices of black media are your voice. And your support provides material encouragement to those who make it their calling to tell you about the events of the day and put them into proper perspective. But as you've seen with TBA's documentaries and the work of Brother Tariq, you have enabled us to push back with media that tells the truth. You're the reason that the message has been able to break through. You made that happen. Without you, even if someone had the ability to make a documentary or to put up billboards or to mass produce the message, it wouldn't mean anything because nobody would pay attention to it. You wouldn't be able to give it away for free. This is why certain white media rejects like Goldie Taylor and Sean King have done crowdfundings and nothing ever came of it. Oh, they raised their raggedy little flags all right. But nobody saluted. Issa Rae raised about $50,000 with her crowdfunding for her Awkward Black Girl series, and the white media treated her like she was the second coming of Norman Lear. Well, with the New Black Media, we routinely lap that one repeatedly, but they're not saying anything about us because what we do threatens them. Now, we're not where we need to be, but we are closer than we've ever been. The difference will be if we persevere. We hopefully have now understood that we could never rely on any one man to be our savior. That's what the civil rights generation failed to understand. You can't hitch your wagon to Dr. King's star or Malcolm's or anyone else's. A man can be discredited. He can be defamed. He can be corrupted, turned against you. A man can be killed. But an ideology? You can't kill that. A leaderless resistance is far, far harder to stop because the code is the leader, and everyone who follows the code becomes a commander in an invisible army. We were doing this black empowerment thing before it was cool. A lot of people tried to invade this space over the years, tried to imitate what we do, but they simply couldn't because you wouldn't let them. Real recognizes real, and it also recognizes phony too. So this month we're going to stay on our mission. But we will also make it a point to remember and reaffirm why we began doing this, why it's so crucially important that there be a black media, a real black media in the first place. Rituals have meaning. Ours has to be a positive affirmation, not a negative one. You want to know why the white right wingnuts can't define woke? It's for the same reason they can't tell you what critical race theory is either. White supremacy is not based on a positive affirmation, it's based on a negative one. They can't say that they are great because of what's good about them, so instead they obsess over black people, and they say that they're great because they're not us. But of course that only works as long as black people are subjugated. Meanwhile, even so, they still imitate so much of what we do. However, our identity is not based upon fighting white supremacy. If white supremacy ended tomorrow, we would still need black empowerment, because a people cannot survive, much less prosper, without being empowered. Even if the white media never existed, we would still need a black media, because black people need accurate information under any circumstances. Ultimately, that's where this is going, a post-white supremacy world, a post-anti-black racism world. But we're not going anywhere until we break these shackles off of us, and then break the anti-black racists who put the shackles on us in the first place. So that's what we're going to do. And as we continue the work, expect to see a lot of people who have been eating off of white supremacy expose themselves. There's a lot of black people who you've seen on TV or in governmental or corporate power or online who understand who they really work for. And as we assert our interests, expect to see these collaborators with white supremacy coming out of the woodwork, whining that we're going to ruin it for everyone. Meaning we're going to ruin it for them. These two big grifters depend on white power for every crumb of their daily bread. This is why you have Byron Allen hustling money from white media corporations by suing them into carrying his crap content. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have Roly-Poly Martin demanding that the DNC spend money with him because they need a Negro frontman to sell their propaganda. Flip sides of the same coin. One is trying to hustle money from white corporations, the other from a white political party. Neither operates in our interests. We've got a lot of work ahead of us, but we're in this for the long haul. We knew it wasn't going to be quick or easy, but we also know the cost that our people will have to pay if we refuse to do it. This is a numbers game, but not the way that you might think. It's the quality of our numbers that matters, not the quantity. We will never be the majority in this country, but if we stand together of one accord, we won't have to be. The forces of anti-black racism have us outnumbered, but when we get on code, we've got them outclassed. Jason Black said it best, "I'm not afraid of small numbers, so long as the numbers are powerful and brought enough resources to inflict their will." You know I go for that. This is in large part why we don't refer to ourselves as a minority, not just because it allows white power to lump us in with every other anti-black faction there is, but also because that kind of wording gets us thinking about ourselves in the wrong context, as being eternally separated from power based on our numbers, when the truth is we should not think of ourselves that way. It's like I've always taught you. What's the difference between a minority and an elite? Power. Once again, I want to thank each and every one of you for the work you've done in helping make this, the New Black Media, what it is. Our relationship is reciprocal. Without us, you have no advocates. But without you, we don't exist. Now more than ever, it matters whose interests black commentators are representing. And now more than ever, it matters who you get your news and information from. So before I end this Sunday address, I want to recognize just a few of the voices of New Black Media and a few of our signal boosters, without which we wouldn't be what we are. This is clearly not exhaustive, of course. If I mentioned everyone, I'd be here till 5 in the morning. But I'd like to mention just a few. TBA, Tariq, Tarian Rain, Mr. Harvey, Lisa Cabrera, Just Eve, Tachina Arnold, Black Voltron Reloaded, Shrampstein, Chris Crazy House, Vicky Dillard, Philip Scott, Miss Debbie, D. Tubman, Trill Texas, Kim M. Stevens, and Judge Joe Brown, and there's a heck of a lot more. We are legion. But for everyone who has been a part of this mission, I want you all to feel free to shout yourselves out in the comments. Take your bow. You've certainly earned it. New Black Media is here to stay. There will be other mentions and commemorations of this month-long celebration to come, but for today, let's at least take a moment to reflect on how far we've come. Once more, family, I thank you. I am humbled by your encouragement and support, and I do not ever take it for granted. I salute you all. As far as we've come, it's gratifying to know that we're just getting started. Good day, and be one.